Hi everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Hello, hello. 1, 2, 3. Is that coming through? Hello, hello, hello. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's better. Good. Thank you. Okay, please, last people, come and grab your seats and try not to trip over all these cables. All right, welcome to Cloud Native London. We are a strong, open, diverse developer community based around cloud, data, and AI based in London. I'm your host for tonight. My name is Cheryl. And tonight we've got 3 speakers for you. So the first talk, 6:45, is going to be called Feature Flags, a Safety Net in the AI Era. 7:15 will be Context-Driven AI Agents. Then we'll take a 15-minute break. Come back at 8 o'clock for Why Cloud Cost Assessment Must Come Before Cloud Native Build. At 8:30, we're going to wrap up and go to the pub. So there's one called The Angel, very close to here, a couple of minutes away. So that's where we're going to keep going if you want to chat more. Sponsors for tonight. So Flagsmith is our first speaker. So I'm going to let Kyle do his own intro as part of his talk. And then for Tech Shack, unless we have a Tech Shack representative here. Okay, so Tech Shack are a tech recruitment agency specializing in the cloud, engineering, and AI. Tech Shack exists to build high-performing tech teams by putting community, connection, and quality first. Our vision is to create the most trusted tech recruitment community where meaningful connections drive innovation and growth. And of course, the other one is Sivo, who are hosting us for tonight. Brad, I don't know if you want to say anything about Sivo. No? Okay. But thank you very much for having us this evening. Okay, so now a couple of questions for you. So please grab your phone, scan this QR code, and it will take you to a live polling service. You don't need to download anything. I'm going to ask a couple of questions about you, and then a couple of questions about how you use cloud native and other technologies. Everyone got that? Okay. First question, is this your first time at Cloud Native London? You should see yes or no. And looks like people are figuring it out already. The no's are just ahead of the yeses here. Not sure if the yeses will catch up. We're also live streaming to YouTube and to LinkedIn. So there might be a few people at home who are also joining us and answering with us here. Looks like the no's have just edged it out, so 55 to 45. Okay, a few people still figuring it out. Good. All right, excellent. Let's move on. What's your job title? So pick whatever's closest to what you do. Your options are architect, application developer, backend developer, engineering manager, DevOps / platform engineer, security engineer, or anything else. And looks like we've got a quite even spread tonight. Everybody's got a little bit of representation here. So nice. If you voted for other, then please do introduce yourself, tell other people what you do as well. Okay. Oops. Okay. Who here uses AI assisted coding? So you use it for at work, for side projects, both, not at all, or we're planning on rolling it out, but not yet. So looks like 60% of people are already saying both, 50, 60. Some people coming in saying not at all. So this question comes from Kyle. Kyle, where are you? Ah, here. So is this what you were hoping for with this question?
It's quite interesting. I forced myself to use AI around a year ago. I was afraid of inertia. It was actually a junior developer that encouraged me to use AI. And I think it's important to throw yourself into it because I think it's inevitable. I think it does transform how you develop software. So being ahead of the curve is a big thing. So it's encouraging to see a lot of people are using it. And even if it's just a side project, you can take that learnings into professional environment too.
Yeah, I definitely think this would have been answered very differently 1 year ago. Would have gotten different results. Next question. Where do you see AI agents creating the most impact? Do you think it's going to be customer service and support, data analysis and insight, software development, or personal productivity? Give people a minute to think about this. What do people say?
And I can see a lot of this stuff from having to feel. But I think it's still important to have this in solve it, but I think it's still a problem, it's quite realistic.
Yeah, with regards to the first question here about who's using AI. So, okay, moving onwards. Third one. Before starting your last cloud project, how was cost considered? We completed a structured cost assessment before design. We estimated costs roughly during architecture discussions. We relied on alerts and budgets after deployment, or costs not actively considered until your spend increased or until you got your enormous bill, in other words. So let's see what people think here. So most people, the majority of say actually saying they did some kind of assessment in advance. So what were you thinking when you thought about this question?
I mean, mostly when you ask companies these kind of questions, they cannot tell you most of the things that you are seeing people answer, but then it was more like looking at the future perspective where cloud native of like evolution where everyone wants to the cloud, but they don't know how the cloud itself operates. Some don't even know what it takes for resources to communicate and what costs those what they care in those resources. So it was something I thought some people will even say they don't really know that much costs when they start deploying resources. So I mean, I'm always surprised seeing most people saying I mean the highest is the estimated cost of most big companies, but then startup companies want to go to markets, and so we don't consider some of these things and end up getting higher costs when there are some prices.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody, for taking part in the live polling and for our speakers for submitting the questions. Please keep this open on your phone because we'll also do Q&A with the speakers using the same service. Okay, I need a selfie for social media. So Everybody is going to wave and have a really big smile, okay? Okay, like really like this thing, okay? Wow. Oh, you guys need to come round. I don't think I'm going to capture you. Okay, good. Thank you. And lastly, if you want to come and speak up here, please go to cloudnativelon.com. This is the QR code. You can speak from 2027. We're booked up already through 2026. But if you fancy sponsoring us and helping support the community through pizza, then can usually squeeze you in a little bit earlier. If you want, you can also promote your own events, promote your own company products, job listings, whatever you want. Everything's on cloudnativelon.com, how you can do that. And that is it from me. So now I'm going to hand over to Kyle. Round of applause, please.
So am I sharing my screen on?
Oh, yes, you are sharing your screen. I'm going to leave this up. Sorry.
Perfect.
Good.
platform back in 2017, we used it for our own platform to release every feature, perhaps as an inception, but we've realized over time that keeping control over the number of feature flags is really important. So we have automatic staleness detection within our feature flags, whereby if you've rolled out a feature and that rollout hasn't changed within a predefined amount of time, the developers have this sort of task list of features to sort of clean up. And we have analytics that show you where in your application that feature is being used and if it's being used at all. Deleting a feature flag is a bit complicated if you've got mobile applications and caching and deployment, but we can help there with that analytics. And yeah, with a lot of sort of disparate teams, we serve some of the biggest companies in the world, like with massive scale and teams. And actually, feature flags actually help with cross-team communication, because what you've actually got is this big list of features in one place, whereas teams wouldn't be talking about the features to each other, they're kind of blind. Whereas you've got this one single project where people are turning on and off feature flags, curious about feature flags, so it actually encourages cross-team communication. I think I hopefully answers the question there.
I have a question from the audience here. Does it automatically add the playwright test if you had included that in your query context?
I mean, yeah, it could do. You can do so much with this idea. Yes, you can automatically create the playwright tests that are dictated by the feature flag evaluations, but then also mocking both the feature flag being on or off, which is something we do in our automated end-to-end tests. We use Test Cafe, which is pretty much exactly the same as playwright. But yeah, that can definitely be done. You can even do crazy stuff like adjust your own code to send over properties about a user and at the same time create a segment that sort of targets those as well. So you can do so much with this idea. Yeah. Yes.
Does Flagsmith support multiple versions? Let's say you've got a mobile app, you've got 3 different versions of the front end.
Yeah.
One version of the back end, and I want to have 3 different sets of parameters. So it can handle versioning.
Yeah. Multivariate feature flags. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, you can definitely do this. You can do this in a lot of different ways. For example, one of the most simplest examples I can tell you about this is we have an announcement banner within our application, and we show different announcements entirely depending on what things about the user. So, for example, if they've rated our application in a positive manner, we can show completely different announcements. And basically, what this comes down to is not just feature flags, but remote configuration. So you can add supplementary data to all of your features, and you can do multivariate feature flags where you say 10% of users get design A, 20% design B, 30% design C, and we handle all of the bucketing. So your application just receives what value and then sort of go down a different code path, different UI. So yeah, you can definitely do it.
Any more questions? Okay, if not, another round of applause, please. Thank you very much. Okay, we are now welcoming our second speaker of the evening. So, you can share your screen. Oh, round of applause, please.
Hi everyone, good evening. I'm Shubhangi. So I'm going to give a talk on context-driven AI agents. Okay, I see come with this.
This is mine. Keep going.
Okay, all right. So in the meantime, yeah, I would like to just give a quick
Alright, so I'm going to kick off now. Modular. Okay, so something I realized the other day is that I've been running this meetup since 2017. So, 3 years. And I think that this is either the 100th meetup or the 101st. Thank you. So thank you for showing up. It's honestly a great joy to me. Come and spend the time and give up their evening for us. So thank you. Okay, now round of applause please for our third speaker.
Should we use this mic, right?
That works.
All right, good. Okay. Good evening once again, and welcome everyone. I'm presenting on, or I'm talking on why cloud cost assessment must come before cloud native build. I mean, cloud native is the evolution now. Cloud is really evolving, and a lot of big companies are going to the cloud. One of the key things you would want to do before going to the cloud or deploying resources is your assessments. One of the key assessments is costing, right, before you can have these resources running. I'll introduce myself, and as Jeffrey. My name is Jeffrey, and I am a cloud leadership evangelist. I have done quite a number of projects on migration and for fintech and government organizations. I currently work on a project with Brassica. It's a fintech payment solution. And I'll be talking about, well, at least the cloud native. I mean, we are all here because of cloud native. And the list. Okay. All right, so for cloud native, we all know cloud native is all about workload hosted on the cloud. And there are a lot of public cloud, AWS, Azure, and then GCP, and then some co-location as well, and a private cloud as well. So for cloud native, you usually want an application broken into smaller pieces or microservices, or have resources running on the cloud with services that may be serverless or infrastructure based, either infrastructure as service, platform as service, or software as service. For this, most companies would prefer to run the cloud resources for the cost drivers for this kind of component. But before you go into the cloud, you want to ensure that you run these assessments to make sure whether your networking, your storage, compute, or hidden fees, and then price models are actually costed. Now, these are examples of cloud resources that are currently run on AWS. But before you want to arrive at these resources, you want to do an assessment of how your network would look like, how your storage would look like, how your compute will look like, if there are going to be any hidden costs or hidden fees, and then the pricing model assessment. So this is why you want to ensure that you go through this process to ensure you have your drive, to ensure you have the quality check down to drive the cost at scale for your cloud native resources. Okay, the cost signature. I want to touch a bit on the cost signature. The cost signature comes with a core principle, which means costs must be taken care of, but not an aftermath. you really want to ensure that your cost is considered, not when the deployment or resources are deployed in the cloud for the sake of expensive resources running, certain resources that are not supposed to be running, called zombie resources. So for this cost, you want to ensure you don't have any idle costs, you don't have any data gravity in the environment. For the ideal cost, you are looking at whether the system costs money or they don't cost. If the system costs money, then it means you want to go back and then do those assessments. And then the cost gravity or the data gravity is where you want to ensure that this is where you are asking the question about how, between what region, whether these resources are supposed to be hosted as a multi-cloud environment or a single cloud environment. Now, what early cost assessment enables? For early cost assessments, you want to ensure you have a clear understanding of cost per user. If you have resources that are supposed to be accessed internally, you want to ensure you are costing them per user to ensure those costs that are being analyzed are not going overboard when users increase or when the users are increased within time. Cost per API could be resources that are hosted in the cloud. And most APIs could be a circle API or a round trip API, whether they are internal or external. External APIs could be built either on the internet or through VPN. You may be having VPN within those environments, and VPN is a network component that could cost without you knowing. So without cost assessment, your VPN for external APIs will be very expensive. So for peak event and then peak event and then financial exposure, you also want to look at you enabling the cost when traffic doubles up. The same with API. When traffic doubles up, your peak event reaches a certain level where costs become uncontrollable. Most companies would want to have cost alerts or dashboards viewing data rather than doing this assessment before these architectural designs are deployed. In that sense, you have reached a point where you may not be able to control those costs, and then those costs may keep going, and you keep getting those alerts when costs are going high. How cost actually emerges. So like I mentioned, the API calls, systems are really expensive because of certain designs, or system deployments in the cloud are really expensive because of certain designs. And this could be serverless, this could be virtual machines running Kubernetes. And one of the key things you want to ensure you check running Kubernetes is how your architecture design was costed. If that design was really costed at the beginning stage or at the architecture stage, then you are looking at Kubernetes with control panel versions that will not increase at some point when developers or dev guys are asking for those resources to be updated, for certain scripts to be run within the environment. So you always want to do this assessment at the beginning stage to ensure services like Kubernetes are taken care of when versioning is done for control plane or the data plane. Cloud cost illusion. This is where the myth, the reality, and then the stats kicks in. Now, the gap between perceived and actual cost drivers. Cloud is expensive, and we can scale at any point because you have access to those resources. And this is not resources that are actually accessed or actually available to you in the store. You don't walk into the store to buy these resources from your own packets, but they are APIs that you call on the cloud, which are easily accessible to you because your companies or entities have already paid or probably paying post-bill or pre-bill. So it becomes a myth where even though it is expensive, that mindset will not be available at that point because assessment has not been done. This is where developers, architects, sometimes data scientists find themselves wanting without necessarily knowing how much cloud may cost or resources may cost because they have started deploying resources without doing the assessment. It is when something like observability, the alerts, the dashboard have been deployed within the cloud environment or within a third-party environment, plugged into the cloud environment to trigger alerts and all this. That is when the shock of how the expenditure or how cloud spends come in. At that point, it is a post-assessment that's going to go on, and that may go on forever, until the bills keep piling up. Whereas if it was a pre-assessment, some of these costs would have been known before those deployments, and then the model for RACI would have helped in that process, where RACI actually talks about, in one of the slides, I'll go into details what RACI means, the RACI model or the RACI framework. Now, 70 to 80% of overspend is a structural assessment failure, not usage driven. Like I mentioned in the example I gave, in most cases, developers or architects already kind of have a structural assessment issue where the assessment hasn't been done to ensure cost is managed at the beginning stage, not when resources are already deployed. So this is where the myth, the reality, and then the stats playing for cloud native deployment. So the missing pillar actually wouldn't be a dream of building without security controls. Cloud native, we talk about, includes DevSecOps, DevOps culture, setting resources for deployment skills and others. But at the end of the day, you have to ensure the missing pillar is identified within the model of RACI, that is responsibility, consulting, information, to ensure that the missing pillar is identified before the deployment is done. Now, when we look at the pillar one, which is security, I was talking to one of my friends, and I was asking him about cloud security, and we were having a chit chat there, and I was saying, does he do governance, risks and compliance, or cloud security? And I think he mentioned he does both. He used to do governance, risks and compliance. Governance, risks and compliance also comes into play under the third pillar, which is reliability. But then the missing pillar here, which is cost behavior, also drives governance, risks and compliance. Because at the end of the day, if the company is at risk and is not able to run the product because assessment wasn't done at the beginning stage, then it becomes difficult for the business to run. It could be a startup, it could be an enterprise that cost is eating them up, and they might want to change cloud environment because of cost. So in cloud native, there shouldn't be that missing pillar, which is the cost behavior pillar. Your product may be reliable, it may be scalable, it may have all the security measures it has in place for the product to do well, but if cost is not behaving well, the company then have issues of probably running the product or helping customers, because customers may start running to other product companies because it is expensive. So at all costs, the missing pillar has to be identified and then ensure that there is no, at all costs, because that missing pillar is not there, we should keep deploying more. And in this case, I'll go back to governance, rubrics, and compliance because it kind of distorts the process of ensuring that assessment was done at the beginning stage for the architectural design itself, where budget becomes a constraint. So your architectural choices act as levers that drastically shift the budget. And if the assessment is not done, it keeps shifting the budget until, like I said, the company runs into chaos. And one of the things I remember doing my leadership in a security assessment was cost components. And I just joined the company and I sit on my desk and I kept murmuring behind me, the cost is too high. The cost is too high. Are we sure we can meet our targets? It looks like people can get bonuses and all that. One of the key things is if the company is doing well and the cost is being managed well and the product is doing well, devs get bonuses. The company gets a lot of profits, maximum profits, and then there are bonuses and then all that for the staff members. Now, for one of the assessment reality, if, for example, you are migrating a 5 TB data, now or before the EU Data Act is kind of scrubbing billing for egress data, right? Does anyone know about the egress data? Yeah. So even though that is there, there's still a little bit of cost that companies are not aware. So that myth there makes it difficult for company to do assessments of what they want to move, even if they have services that are stocked from certain cloud environments. It could be public, AWS, Azure, and then GCP. But those cost components, when assessed at that point, would help companies to save more, not considering that free egress data because of the EU Data Act. There's still a little bit of cost component that companies or organizations would have to ensure they do an assessment of, unless you are not doing or the company is not doing a life to life. This is where a framework called the total total cost of ownership is done. Or you could use AWS calculator, even though it only gives you an estimate. If you want to go into details to cost it well, you could use both the AWS calculator, Azure calculator, GCP modeling calculator with the total costs of ownership. Now, back to the egress example I was giving. And if it is 5 terabytes of data and it's going to be live to live, like I said, there's going to be some cost component. And a missing pillar will be found there as well. Now, for the missing pillar, I actually designed a typical example of what costs look like, or the cost killer look like, one of the missing pillars for a company I had done a project for, and they were doing the maximum transmission unit fragmentation wasn't calculated well, and there was a financial impact failure, which was 5,000 £5,000 in loss of engineers' hours because they were finding it difficult to get that data across because the assessment wasn't done. And at the end of the day, even though there's no direct cost to resources that were being used, it was taking time for engineers to troubleshoot that because the assessment wasn't done well. Here, the key thing is resources were not being used, but the time for troubleshooting migration was becoming difficult and 5,000 was being lost. That is the mismatch. And then the no index trap, where the target for relational database configuration a day for the non-assessment of the input-output processing support cost wasn't done, so it was causing issue, and that was £1,000 provision of IOPS cost, which meant that the assessment that was done for the architectural design wasn't accurate. Whereas the CDC, which is the capture data exhaustion, was also not working properly because the source VM that was being used had a business downtime because the calculation or the assessment that was done inside for the architecture wasn't done well. So this is a typical example, this is a typical missing pillar that I mentioned the cost behavior in my previous slide that a lot of companies miss. And I believe going forward, if you are here and you are a cloud architect or a DevOps engineer, and your main focus is to support your company on how to maximize resource usage or ensuring the assessment is done accurately, you want to pay attention to some of these details. Okay, so this was more of like a cost assessment before build was a bonus slide I added at some point. And cloud native failures are really just technical. They are financial design failures. Today, we run beyond billing. What it means is you may have elasticity, speed, and then scale, but an unpredictable cost behavior can lead to certain emergence costs that will cost your design decisions. Now, the assessment for your resource build or your cloud build is not a delay. So at all costs, deploy the resource. We want products to market next week. Shouldn't be the case. But an assessment will always help in ensuring that this emerging cost in your design doesn't affect the company or your own self, because at the end of the day, you still want that bonus, right? This is also a bonus slide, and this was the last minute assessment I did because I checked sometimes the hidden UK concept is the unique risks where the risk factor of currency fluctuation. And the reason why I added it, it's also because there were companies that complained back home, actually from Ghana, and the currency there is cedis. So I compared the US dollar to the CD and then the British pounds. And for government and public sectors, some of these fluctuations affect them, and then the fixed price contrast leave no room for architectural accidents. If that assessment is not carried out at the initial stage, if there are fluctuations, it will definitely affect the British pound. And for this, I believe we all know AWS, Azure, GCP charges in the US dollars, right? And if that happens, currency conversion will definitely affect the pounds. And just like I mentioned, back home, it really affects the Ghana cedis when the assessment is not carried out at the initial stage for planning to be ensured and for the resources that are deployed are run perfectly without the noise about observability, the alert is triggering 5,000 a month, and cost optimization to ensure that time is used very well. And because of that, I did an example of one of the RESI model I used. I believe, has anyone, or does any member here in their company use the RESI model a lot, or the framework? Like, is it in different projects or only specific projects? Like for different projects as in development, or just any specific project?
per department.
Okay.
And then also per project.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah. So for the entire journey for a particular product, a racing model or framework can be adopted. When you have a racing model or a framework, this is where every individual within the company, whether in the development team or the cloud engineering team or the architects, knows that this is where they have to take care of activities. I mean, you can have activities. This is just one I did for a project, but you can have activities where you have a large Excel sheets with what you have, the roles within organizations that drive the products. You have cloud architect, you have DevOps, you have FinOps, product owner, and security SecOps. And once you have these narratives on the Excel, you're able to define who is responsible, who has to be consulted, who is accountable, and then who is supposed to be informed. It helps in ensuring certain tasks are completed on time and also helps to communicate who has to do what, avoiding the issue of back and forth. You are supposed to do this. I didn't know. I didn't know I was given a chance, or I didn't know I was the one who's supposed to take off this task. We didn't inform you. Oh, you did that. There was an issue. You told me to do it. Once you have this racing model, it helps streamline the process. So, RACI model really helps not only in development team, but like the entire ecosystem of cloud native companies. So that's what I just described. But then the three-phase sequence of sustainable builds. Phase one is cost behavior modeling. You have to ensure that you are asking what's happening to the bill if for users to double check if users are double or they want to double check. Ensure that growth of that double check is not only per user, but there's a forecast particular percentage that will ensure the cost behavior modeling. The architectural constraint, you are defining the cost ceiling as a non-functional requirement. The phase continuous governance, where I mentioned only now do you implement alerts and FinOps dashboard. So the risk has to be taken care of, which is the assessment, and the governance has to be a continuous task. Okay, my time is running out, so I have to run up quick. Okay, so I talked about this already, and then this is where I mentioned the multi-cloud environment, ensuring that that assessment is done, whether I'm going to be using multi-replication or high velocity logging, and then manage instances. I would want to talk about this because this is really necessary, and this is more of like the blue line ability to influence, and the red line committed costs, and the highest opportunity where the sweet spots where you have all the opportunity in the world to ensure that the assessment is done before you get to the committed stage where you have to now do a continuous governance of checking alerts, optimizing costs. You don't want to go to running and optimizing costs. Because once you have the opportunity to ensure you have the right to influence costs, the assessment you have carried out, then you have the highest opportunity for cost saving before it gets to the committed cost. So this design gives you an overview of what it looks like at all the three stages: design, architecture, build and test, deploy and go live, and then run and then optimize. As the project timeline, ensuring that the cost assessment is done before that phase is done. Because okay, so proactive and reactive. I mentioned that at some point in the slide where you are ensuring that the problem is taken care of, which is the cost illusion, and then the missing pillar is not off the radar. The evidence is what I gave, the cost influence curve, and then the solution where you have to ensure that opportunity is taken care of before you get to the committed stage, which I believe is the solution for most cloud-native environments. Cloud adoption framework, and this is 90% of enterprises will adopt cloud, hybrid cloud through 2027, and over 90% of enterprises use at least one cloud services. I think 2025 last year, and most of those users or those enterprises focus on shifted from initial adoption to optimizing existing cloud usage and more workload migration, quiet architecture, and then not cost predictability. You want to ensure once you architect those solutions, you are labeling or ensuring that assessment of those resources, whether multi-cloud environments, serverless, or infrastructure as service, are taken care of to ensure that when API calls are being run within the internal network or outside the network, those costs that are accumulated doesn't affect the business or doesn't affect your product itself. Okay, so I touched on the cloud adoption framework, and it is a key model or a key resource within the assessment itself. Once you know all these 4 items, the assessment should be easier or easy for you to carry out, because you have a planned cloud native assessment tool, you have build cloud native assessment tool, the deployment cloud native assessment tool, and then the optimization cloud native assessment tool, which will be your governance for dashboard creating, alerting, and all that. Okay, so okay, and these are the examples I mentioned in my previous slide. And if you look at all the public cloud environments or all the public cloud companies, they have specific assessment tools you could use. One of the tools that you could use, that is the first class or the first party tool, will be your pricing calculators. And these are some of the resources you could use these calculators to estimate costs with the total cost of ownership for you to be able to get correct estimates based on certain factors. If you have the right architecture, then you're able to do the costing and then get them right. Sometimes 95 to 99% based on what resources are going to be run. And this is a typical example of how the cloud native itself look like. If you have a very strong cloud native environment, believe me, they should be able to do all this stuff. But this shouldn't be a post-assessment. You should always combine the two: pre-assessment first, which is the assessment before build, and then the post-assessment, where you still want to have efficient resource usage, where you have alerting for governance. And this is just a typical example of how a structured cloud-native environment is within AWS, and APIs travel all around, either externally or within the network. And it could be external because you have maybe a third-party integration that will have maybe internal network configuration, that a private endpoint, or you have an external internet access where definitely egress will still be a cost at that point. And if it is connected to a database or resources outside the environment, to a third-party integration or to a third-party vendor or a company, you definitely have to have these resources configured like this, and it will bring costs to either your company or to the third-party individual. And this could be cost driven by cache hit ratio, it could be geographical distribution, validation dependency, And metrics, traces, security logs, injections, and all that could be a cost within this particular traffic or between these resources. So without that first party assessment, it could be a cost added on your architecture. Okay, and this is the same example where you have a Kubernetes. This is a Kubernetes kind of design, which could be having issues with cost if you don't have the assessment done earlier on or initial assessment done before the post assessment. And this is where you would have patching issue because if, for example, you are running Kubernetes, and you have different versions supported, cost may be increased. And that version that is supported will probably be expensive as compared to costs that are not patched. And this is where AWS may be forcing you to upgrade because the community has not patched either the control plane of that particular Kubernetes, and you'll be forced to go through this selection. And then if the architecture design is to choose managed node groups, you may have certain costs incurred if assessment is not done right. Even if it's self-managed, you may have that issue, and even if it's AWS Fargate's OS running on the Kubernetes. Okay, I spoke about this already, but then just for the viewers, we want to ensure some of these things are actually assessed as well. The small calls, the network address, and all those data that comes within the network or goes outside the network, that could be either in the multi-AZ zone or different data centers. It could be multi-cloud environments as well. And this is a typical example of how an already deployed resources would have its post-assessment done. And even though you may have this solid design, you may still have issue if you don't have the pre-assessment done for your cloud native. And this is the call to action. A call to action and key things or key takeaways for you viewers. And then the at all cost model that has to be prevented. And an information just for you to note. Okay, I think I mentioned this too. So that brings me to the end of my talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was a long talk. 32
we are
slides.
a little bit over time, so apologies, we won't have time to do questions now. But if you're coming to the pub afterwards to the Angel, then maybe you can ask some questions there. That's it from us for tonight. We'll be back again on the first Wednesday of each month. So see you next time. Have a good night.
Around about 9 minutes. 9 minutes.